Hello, everyone, and welcome to Second Cup with Keith. I am your host, Keith Giles. Yes, once again, live here Monday morning, Second Cup with Keith. And boy, um, I have something I want to talk about today. I hope I can connect all the dots and make it all make sense. And I'm not just rambling for the next hour. I'll wait for some people to to notice that we're live here, and let me see if we get some comments going. But hey, before I get going, I guess too far I should say, this Choircast podcast is brought to you by the book, The Quantum Sayings of Jesus, Decoding the Lost Gospel of Thomas by yours truly. It is number one on Amazon. It has been since April. I've sold over 1,000 copies so far, and it just keeps going. I'm very, very excited about that book. And currently I'm working on the follow-up to that book, The Quantum Sayings of Mary. That, of course, would be Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Mary. And it's going to be paired with a commentary on the Gospel of Truth, which is a Valentinian text. It was discovered at Nag Hammadi. Working on that now. That should be available. I'm going to do my best to get that out in May. So almost just under a year, from the previous book to this book, Quantum Sayings of Jesus. So just about a year later, we'll get the Quantum Sayings of Mary out. So excited about that. Very excited about that. And I just wrapped up with Matthew DiStefano, the book. It's called Reading Romans Right. It'll be the first book in what we're hoping is going to be a long-running series. It'll be a Bible series, Bible commentary series. And, of course, starting off with Romans, because it's one of the most misunderstood and misused texts, especially by hardcore conservative evangelical Christians. Gospel Coalition, Lisa Childers, all those people love to misquote and misuse and misunderstand the book of Romans. And yeah, it's great. I know I wrote it. I know I'm biased, but Matthew and I both have gone through the book now multiple times. We're starting to get some really encouraging endorsement quotes from different scholars. Just got one from Eric Rattan that was great. Brandon Robertson wrote the foreword, and it was really wonderful, the things he had to say. So hopefully more will be pouring in. That book will be out in March. Very much looking forward to that. And we're also, by the way, looking for people to help us join the launch team to launch this book. We want as many people as we can on the launch team. We have plans beyond the typical book launch team. So we're going to ask a little bit more of people on the book launch team, not just read the advanced copy of the book, purchase it on release day, rate and review it on Amazon, and share a link on your social media. Of course, we need you to do that. But we also want to ask, we're going to do like an email campaign. We're going to ask people on the team to email people that would typically be hostile to the book, and basically ask them to respond to the book. And we'll write some scripts and things like prompts to help you do that, as well as, of course, we want to mail copies. We'll do this. We'll mail copies to places like the Gospel Coalition and some other, websites and platforms, hopefully to get their reaction response. So, excuse me. Yeah, so excited about that. And again, we'll be giving more information about that as we get a little bit closer to the date. But this is our first episode of Second Cup with Keith in the new year. So happy New Year, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. We kind of stayed at home. It was kind of small, just me and Wendy, my mom, and Dylan, our oldest, and nothing super. We didn't stay up till midnight. I think we toasted around 11. But Wendy and I always do this thing where we have the jar of remembrance. I talked about this, I think, last time. We went through the jar of remembrance and just reminded ourselves of the great things that happened this previous year. And now we've got an empty jar sitting in our living room, and looking forward to filling that up with new and good things in the new year. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? So it's really funny because I really had no idea what I was going to talk about. this morning when I got up, and Wendy and I started talking about stuff, and it's really kind of odd. Excuse me. Those of you watching, I'm kind of blowing my nose a little bit. Got a little bit of, so I apologize. Yeah, Wendy just had a memory, something that was in her mind, and we started talking about it, and she goes, "This really odd. I don't know how it relates to anything. I don't know the point. I don't even know why I'm telling you this, but this is just what popped into my head." But the more we talked about it, I thought, "Oh, I get it. I see how this could be something worth talking about," and it actually is something that I think is very relevant uh, to the new year that's coming up. So, John Sinke, my good friend John, say hello to your lovely bride Wanda. John says, "Hey Keith, 9 inches of snow here in Cincinnati. Don't you wish you were here?" Yeah. Well, yes and no. I like Cincinnati, by the way. Cincinnati, Ohio. Visited there a couple times. I really like it. Not just because my friends John and Wanda are there. That's part of it. But we have some other friends that live in the area too, Chuck and Susan, and yeah, it's a nice place too. But you also get a lot of cold weather up in Ohio. Wendy and I are looking to move. Hopefully this year. We don't know for sure, but we're hoping maybe this year we can move out of El Paso. We don't know exactly where yet, but hopefully somewhere with a Trader Joe's. And we've got our little wish list. So anyway, let's get into this episode. I've rambled enough. So the thing that Wendy reminded me of this morning that I want to talk about. So I'm going to tell you this thing that really happened, and then I'm going to hopefully take us on a walk that I hope is going to come back around to something significant that actually happened today in the news. There's your tease. Okay, so what Wendy was remembering was years ago, I did this conference called the Non-Con. It was the Non-Conference, and it was the tagline was a conference for people that never want to attend a conference again. I got the idea after I had attended a conference at the Crystal Cathedral, which was just down the street from where we lived in Orange County at the time. A friend of mine was speaking there at this. It was like an emerging conference, so you can kind of get an idea of the timeline of what was going on when this happened. When would that have been? Early mid 2000s, maybe something like that. I don't remember exactly the date, but I went to the conference and I heard my friend do a little workshop, and then we went to the main session, and there was a worship leader, selling his album, in the lobby that performed, and then the speaker got up who had published his 20th book, and was pretty much his message, his keynote address was all about the chapters of his book and all that. And again, that's fine. Look, I'm an author. I speak. I've done similar things. It's not, but the headspace I was in at the time, I just came home and I was just really not just disappointed, but kind of almost really upset. Like, so I started ranting to Wendy, like, why do we do conferences? What is the point? Like, you know, like you go to this thing, people pay hundreds of dollars to register. Then they pay hundreds of dollars, maybe $1,000 to airfare and hotel and food and a rental car and all that stuff to go sit in a room with a bunch of strangers. And here's some guy. Well, first listen to some worship leader, play songs off his album that just came out that's for sale in the lobby, and then hear the keynote speaker basically pitch their book. And they write all these notes down on this, the back of the program, and they fold it up and stick it in their Bible, and then it falls out 10 years later, and they go, "Oh yeah, I remember that conference." But like, does it accomplish anything? Does it do anything? Like, has that person, anybody who attended, like, when you get home afterwards and you've wasted 3-4 days of your life and you've spent a couple $1,000s, did it accomplish anything? Why? What is the point of it? Why do we do it? So that was my reaction. I just had this reaction to this conference, right? And was ranting and raving about it. And Wendy, wonderful, I love Wendy. She goes, after I kind of exhausted myself, she goes, "Well, what kind of a conference would you want to go to?" And it just made me think. The question was wonderful because I was just like, huh, well, and I literally started writing it down. I had a little notebook and I just started writing it down. Well, number one, it would be small. The goal wouldn't be to get 5,000 people into a room. It'd be like 100 people, and we'd cap it at 100 people, like 99 people. That's it. So number one, small on purpose. Number two, if there was any worship or anything like that, it would be one guy you never heard of with a guitar in the middle of the room. Not a band, no one with an album to promote, nothing like that. No famous, person. If we're going to worship, let's just worship, right? And get the celebrity out of the way. And it would be very conversational, like the person who spoke could speak for maybe 15 minutes tops, and then the rest of it would be Q&A and conversation and dialogue between everybody else, which is another reason to keep it small, right? If there's only 100 people in the room, it's more likely that we could actually have a back and forth conversation. We could hear each other. We could hear people in the audience discussing things and responding to things. So very conversational, short presentations, all of that. And so we did that. Like I ended up doing it. It was called the non-con. And it was actually really, really cool. And one of the things, as I was writing down this ideas, one of the ideas was I wanted David Roos to speak, and I wanted Jackie Pullinger. Now, Jackie Pullinger, if you don't know who she is, she's one of my heroes. She wrote a book called Chasing the Dragon. It's just a testimonial about her amazing life as a missionary to Hong Kong. And but she kind of got in hot water, right? Because she's from England. She lives now in China. She's been doing this amazing work in China. And when she comes to the States to speak, she kind of ruffles feathers and rubs people the wrong way and all that stuff. So anyway, I reached out to her. I invited her. I told her the vision. She loved it. She loved the vision. But she goes, yeah, American audiences can't really handle me. They don't like what I have to say. And I said, I want you to come because of that. And I'm hoping you're going to give it to us with both barrels. Because even though people they're not comfortable with the things you say, we need to hear these things, right? So that was it. She said, I'm in. So we did it. It was a really great event. But so all of that setup is to explain the thing that Wendy was remembering. Like we charged people, I think, $20 for this thing. Like we kept it really low, right? Because again, the goal wasn't for all of us to pocket a bunch of money. We paid for, I don't even know if we paid for Jackie Pullinger's airfare, because she said she would just want to come and attend the event. She just wanted to be there. And I was like, well, if you're here, we want you to speak. So, and she knew we had a small budget. So I think, but we put her up in a hotel, we paid her food. I picked her up at the airport, took her back, all that stuff. But we kept everything low. I didn't make any money. David didn't make any money. We didn't pay anybody. It was all volunteer stuff. But anyway, so we kept it affordable. It was like $20 per person. We had 100 people. We maxed out. We had people begging me to let them in, but I was like, nope. The cutoff was 100 people. Sorry, we can't have more than 100 people. But even only charging $20, we were able to serve coffee and like donuts and danishes and fruit in the morning. So we served breakfast. We had snacks and bottles of water throughout the day. We had lunch, which was pizza from a really great pizza place in Newport Beach, California. What's the name? Aventina's? Is that what it was called? Something like that. Laventina's, something like that. Great pizza from this pizza place for everybody. And then for dinner, we did Pollo Loco, which was catered and which is like chicken, right? Chicken, beans, rice, tortillas, things like that, some sides. So, okay, all that setup is to explain the thing that Wendy remembered. So we've been going all day. This is the dinner time. We all ate dinner together. That was the other thing in my vision was we all share all of our meals together. So everybody at the conference sits together, eats together, talks over. And some of the best things about the conference were those conversations people just had spontaneously, not recorded, not scripted, not prompted, just ordinary everyday conversations people were having as we were eating, which was a really cool part of the conference. It was a great idea. It was really, really fun. So anyway, for dinner, we had the chicken from Pollo Loco laying out on the table. People stand in line to serve themselves. And the first, 10, 20, 30 people through the line were piling the food onto their plates. Now, they know there's only a certain amount of food to go around. They know we have to, and I think we even told them, please share, right? Please only take a couple of pieces. But it didn't matter. There were people, the first 20, 30 people were piling like 4 pieces of chicken and, extra beans and rice and corn and whatever else we had. Like they were just piling up food. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Right. But we're watching this and we're thinking, well, tough luck for the people at the end of the line, right? They're going to get nothing or they're going to get like a wing or something. And that is kind of what happened. Like the last 5, 10 people, there was just not a lot left. They maybe just had beans and rice. So it was disappointing, right? Wendy and I were disappointed in that behavior. Like the whole point of this conference was about justice, was about like we're here to listen to Jackie Pullinger come from Hong Kong and talk to us about giving up ourselves for the sake of the poor and following Jesus and this radical giving. And yet here we are as Americans piling our plates to stuff ourselves so that other people behind us in the line don't have enough food, right? In a way, it was a little object lesson of like this. We are demonstrating the problem we have as Americans. The reason why there are people in our society who are homeless and don't have enough is because there's so many of us who have everything and control those resources, right? And globally, this is also like why there's so many countries around the world there that are suffering in poverty. It's not because there's not enough food to go around. It's that there are some people that are actually actively preventing those resources to make it down to those people that really need it. Anyway, but it was still frustrating, right? So that was what Wendy was remembering that happened. Let me see. I'm going to read it. I'm going to stop right here before I move on to my point and read some comments. So James Inglis says, I lived in that world for many years. It scratches an itch, but never fully solves anything because then you wouldn't need to go to the next one. Yeah, the whole thing about conferences, right? Matt Warren says, good stuff. This is the kind of service I dig. Jeremy Wood says hi. Michael Garcia says hi. All right. Okay, so this is the setup, right? This is what Wendy was remembering, just being frustrated that people were that way. So I was thinking about, well, what are some contexts that could be something we could talk about on Second Cup with Keith? And then for some reason, what I thought of was like what we could have done in hindsight about that problem, right? Like I think our knee-jerk reaction would be to sort of like stand up with like for me to take the microphone and stand up front and sort of shame and guilt all the people that piled plates full of food and point to the people that have nothing and say, look at that. See what you did? These other people now have nothing to eat because you guys took way too much, which wouldn't really accomplish very much, right? Other than to shame and guilt people. Like they might be like, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. You're right. Now these people are shamed publicly to go and like walk over to the people with empty plates and kind of put some chicken on their plate, right? So that's how we could do it. And frankly, honestly, I think that's our natural inclination as human beings is that sort of like, I'm going to be your dad right now. I'm going to be your parent right now. And I'm going to like scold you and publicly rebuke you and shame you and kind of force you to do the right thing that you should have done in the first place, right? But is that the most effective way? Like, in other words, would that have been the Jesus way? Like, what if instead, what I could have done, like we're all sitting down now eating with our plates, right, in our chairs. Some people don't have food. What if I called those people forward who had empty plates and I gave them the microphone and I said, hey, I just want you to meet some of the people here. Like while they're holding their plate, like have them hold their plate and they just, give them a name and a face. Like, what's your name? Where are you from? In other words, sort of interview them, let their names be known, let their faces be known, let their voices be heard, and let people notice that their plate doesn't have food in it. And I could do that for everyone, the 10, 20 people. Just I could go around like, oh, thank you. Okay, what's your name? And then I think what would have happened was the people sitting there with piles of food on their plate would have noticed, like, they would have caught what was happening. Oh, Keith is emphasizing these people that came and don't have any food. Like, I wouldn't talk about it, I wouldn't mention it, but you would see it, right? It would become obvious. And then what that might do is sort of spontaneously, it would give those people who had more than they needed an opportunity on their own to sort of check themselves and say, I should share some of my food, right? And then they would have spontaneously, you know, shared some chicken with their neighbor. And some of these people that they just had humanized. They're not just random people. We know their name. We've heard their voice. We've seen their face. We know where they're from. We know why they came. We know how they're enjoying the conference so far. In other words, that kind of a thing could have helped to unite us. That we would have not seen, we would not have related to each other as sort of an us and them. Like, I need what I need. I got to make sure I get enough for me, and I don't really care about you. It would have been an opportunity for the group to have become an us. Oh, we are here together. We all came for similar reasons. We care about justice. We care about sharing, right? Essentially what we would be doing, saying it out loud. And then it invites that empathy. It invites people to sort of have that paradigm shift and say, oh, this is better. It would be better if everybody had enough. It would be better if we shared our extra with people who don't have any. And it would have been a way of doing it that would not have brought guilt or shame or rebuke. And it would have allowed sort of a spontaneous outpouring of genuine human empathy and compassion. And as I was thinking about that this morning, like, oh, that could have worked. And I was like, if I'm ever in that situation again, maybe I would do something like that. That would have worked. I think that would have worked. And why would it have worked? Right? Well, because it's a more creative way of just helping people take a couple of steps out of themselves to notice people around them. And actually, I wish I had done that, because the whole point of the conference was that kind of a thing. And people did have those aha moments. Unfortunately, not around the food table in that particular instance, but they definitely did in other ways. Like, some of those conversations were really significant. Like, I remember in David Roos's session, a powerful moment where one guy just burst into tears when he just suddenly realized kind of that inner selfishness. And it was really beautiful. It's very powerful. And the same thing happened with Jackie Pullinger. So yeah, I've learned enough now that maybe I would have done it different next time, if there was ever a next time. But then what that made me think of, and you may be ahead of me, some of you listening to what I'm saying may be a step ahead of me, and you know where I'm going to go with this. Matt Warren says, I hear this, bro. I've encountered this too. Judy Springsteen says, addressing it in a blessing over the food, inviting introspection. Yeah, that might have been too, but I think we blessed it before we served. But yeah, that might have been another way to do it. But what I'm saying is, again, if I'd have done it in a blessing afterwards, it would have been more like, it still would have been a little bit more like, not everybody got enough food, but I mean, like, I just know myself. If it was me doing the talking to address it, the guilt and the shame would have somehow worked its way in there. And I don't want that. I'm trying to find a way to get around it, to sort of, I want to activate the empathy within each person so that it's their idea, right? that they are the ones that go ding. They're the ones that have the aha moment and go, oh my gosh, yeah, I should do this. This is the good thing I should do, right? Which is really a Holy Spirit moment, right? If you've ever had that sort of experience of like, oh, the Holy Spirit showed me something, at least in my experience, those kinds of things would happen. It was never about shame. It was always another way. Like hey Keith, you could do this. Or wouldn't it be cool if you did this, Keith? And then maybe later I would reflect on, yeah, why didn't I think of that? Why wasn't that the first thing I thought? Right? Why did that have to come later? Why did I need a little prompt to get it? But again, that's after the fact. That's not what's happening when I'm having the aha moment. That it isn't, so the voice of God that speaks to us isn't the voice of condemnation or shame or guilt or any of that, right? At least again, in my experience, it's always been a better way. Like, you could do this, you could do that, right? Alan Vanderley says, Keith, brilliant. This seems to be the creative free will agency that Jesus teaches and gives us. Exactly. So let me now carry this over into something else that I was thinking as I was thinking this about this real world thing that actually happened. I thought, what if, and again, I'm just saying what if that's the whole point of the two different times in the Gospels that Jesus feeds the multitudes? And you may have heard this before. I know a lot of progressive Bible teachers, this is kind of the way they teach it. But for me, in the context of what I just said, like having been in a real life situation where I experienced something like this on a smaller scale with only 100 people, it really kind of clicked for me. So think of it this way. Again, I'm just saying, what if? What if that miracle is actually a parable? What if that miracle in the Gospels of feeding the multitudes is actually an object lesson, similar to what I'm talking about with this, what happened at the non-con? In other words, there's 5,000 people, and we know that they're hungry. And the disciples show up and go, hey, Jesus, feed these people, or send them away. Let's send them away. And Jesus says, no, you feed them. Like, what do you mean? Well, and he's like, well, what do you have? So again, it's addressing the selfishness of the disciples. The disciples are thinking, well, there's only 12 of us, and all we have are like 5 loaves and a couple of fish. That's barely enough for the 12 of us, right? So they're wanting to hold on to that. So Jesus invites them to give away, to share what little they have with everybody else, but to do it in a way that's very obvious. Everybody has to sit down in groups. And then very publicly, Jesus is showing, hey guys, hey, 5,000 people, here's all we have. And it's barely enough to feed us, but we're now going to break that apart and we're going to start passing it out and sharing it with everybody. Now, isn't the same thing going to happen that I'm talking about for people who did have maybe an extra loaf or some fish in their pocket or their bag or whatever? They see Jesus, who's the teacher, who's the rabbi, who's the one they're out following his teachings. And he starts doing this. And they're looking around going, there's no way. And so basically Jesus isn't going to eat. Jesus and his disciples are modeling for us an extravagant giving of like, we'll starve, we'll eat nothing. We'll break apart what little we've got, knowing it's not even close to enough. It's not even going to make it halfway in this crowd, right? That maybe the first 10% of the people here are going to get even a crumb, a little something to chew on. But beyond that, like, there's going to be nothing. But what if the act of, again, put yourself in the crowd. You're in the crowd, right? And then you see this being modeled by Jesus. Everybody sit down. People are hungry. There's some kids here. There's some women here, there's some children here, there's some older people here. It's a long way, but we want to make sure everybody has something to eat. So what little we've got, we're going to give all of it, and we're just going to break it up. And watch us start doing this. And as they start to model that, other people say, "I'll do that too." All the other people in the crowd are saying, "Wow, I love that Jesus is doing that. I'll do it too." here's some of my bread, here's some of my fish. I'm going to break mine up too and start passing it around. And it would be easy to do because everyone's already in the mode of breaking and passing, breaking and passing, breaking and passing. And then you would take out yours and break and pass and break and pass. And then somebody else would see this spontaneous outflowing of giving and sharing and caring and empathy and say, I want to share. I want to give the way Jesus did and the way that guy did and the way this other person did. And I'm going to do it too. Again, knowing that what I have is very little, probably barely enough for you. But between them, they were able to feed everybody. And even there was even left over. So though, in other words, it's almost as if Jesus knew, or at least suspected, that most of these people that came, or at least a lot of the people that came, they probably did, come out into the wilderness and plan ahead. They probably said, hey, we're walking out here in the desert to hear this Jesus guy. Bring this, bring that, Why? Because of course, we're all selfish. We're going to think about, hey, I'm going to get hungry out there. It's hot. It's a long walk. It's going to be a long walk back. I'm going to stay out. Who knows how long I'm going to be out there? Of course, I'm going to grab some bread, some fish, whatever they ate back then, fruit, whatever. Of course you would, right? And a few of them didn't. A few of them maybe ate what they had on the way or while they were there, but you know what I mean? So I think Jesus suspected that, yeah, I bet in this crowd of 5,000 people, 3,000, however many different times, it happened twice that we know of, there is enough here. And rather than, so there are ways to handle that, right? Suspecting that, assuming that Jesus could have said, all right, everybody sit down, pull out your food, break it in half and share it with the person next to you. Yeah, that would have happened. It could have worked that way. But then that's, again, more of a command. I'm telling you to do something. That's not, there's no inner heart change. There's no inner opportunity for everyone in that crowd to get in on that act of giving and sharing, radically giving and sharing, to the point of like, I'm going to give it all away. Not just half of it, not just some of it. I'm willing to have nothing to make sure that everyone here has enough to eat. And it reverses that selfishness, right? I watched I didn't watch the whole thing, but there's an excellent documentary on YouTube about Rene Girard. And I know I've talked about this before. I've written a book, Jesus Unforsaken, deals with Rene Girard and mimetic theory and all that. And once you understand mimetic theory, you realize, like, first of all, it is true. And it is absolutely the case. All of us are mimetic. We all desire things. The things that we desire, we don't desire them because in a vacuum. We desire them because we see other people desiring them, right? This is why marketing works. That's why when you see Lady Gaga, I'm just picking an example. You see someone famous in a commercial drinking this or wearing that, it works because if they want it, if they value it, it must be great. So I want it too. And then we think that sort of brand, by sharing that brand, bring that brand into our world, it makes us special like them, right? We want to be like these people. So we dress like them, talk like them, eat like them, dress, all these kind of things. We want the things that they want. That's mimetic. It's demonstrated, it's proven. It's called a mimetic theory, but I would say it's the truth. Like, this is human nature. This is how we are. And so that mimetic mechanism that we're all part of is very selfish, right? It's motivated from a very internal egoistic kind of a thing of, I want this. Either if it's food, of course it's for survival. I need food and shelter and clothing. So that's a basic thing. But beyond that, it's like, I want that person, I want to marry this person because other people find this person attractive. And therefore, if I have that person and other people find that person attractive, then they will look at me and say, wow, you got that person, right? That person is yours, right? And again, these are all just the ways of, a lot of it is very subconscious. We're not consciously saying this out loud, but subconsciously, this is what is driving our behaviors. I know I've done an episode on Second Cup with Keith on mimetic theory before, so you can look that up if you're curious. I have a book called Second Cup with Keith as well, where I go through chapters, where I've talked about it there as well. And as I mentioned, the Jesus Unforsaken book. But anyway, so we're all mimetic this way, right? And by the way, this mimetic thing, this tendency for us to desire what other people desire is at the heart. It is the root. It is the bedrock of the 10 Commandments and all the assumptions of what's going on in the Old Covenant, in the Old Testament scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, right? Do not covet your neighbor's wife. In other words, don't want what your neighbor has. You're not your neighbor's wife or donkey or whatever, right? Don't desire these things that other people around you also desire. Don't steal. What is stealing? They have it. I want it. I want it. Why do I want it? Because they have it, right? So probably 6 or 7 of the 10 Commandments have something to do directly with mimetic desire. And the way the 10 Commandments address this inherent, quote unquote, sin that all of us deal with, simply because we're human beings, the way it deals with it is to basically say, don't stop it. Here's the problem. We can't stop it. We are helpless. I cannot not desire what my neighbor desires. I cannot help but want and desire what people I look up to also desire. Celebrities, sports figures, musicians, artisans, whatever. We all do it. And we can say we don't, but I'm telling you, I worked in advertising and marketing for 15 years. And I'm telling you, it works. And the reason marketing and advertising work is exactly because of this mimetic principle. Because we all respond to they've got it, so I want it. That's why marketing works. That's why it's a multi-billion, maybe trillion-dollar industry. That's why people run ads on everything from TV shows to YouTube videos, because that works. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I was going to say something else about that, but it just left me. Anyway, yeah, I recommend you look into that if you're curious about it, because you can see it happening all over the place. In fact, I think the way that Rene Girard first noticed it was, I think it was a story, a novel or something, a very old novel. He used to be a literature professor. And he actually noticed it first in literature, but then he started noticing it, also in history. And then he realized, like, oh, this is a universal human pattern, right? And it was something where a guy, if I can remember how it worked. There was a guy and he wanted to divorce his wife. They've been married a long time, and this is again a story, and kind of wanted to divorce her. He was bored with her. He didn't find her attractive anymore. So he asked his best friend to seduce her, right? Because he thought, hey, if I can prove that she's not faithful to me, then I can divorce her, right? So the friend is like, okay, sure, I'll do it. So the friend starts to flirt with the wife and secretly, take her out and go dancing and drinking, whatever. And now all of a sudden that the original guy desires his wife more than ever before. Why? Why all of a sudden this woman that he was married to for 20 years, he was ready to divorce her. He was so bored with her. There was no spark in their relationship. All of a sudden now, when his best friend desires her, now he desires her even more. So it's this mimetic rivalry. I desire her simply because my friend desires her. And now he wants her back. Okay. That's what I was going to say. The most simple way to express a mimetic desire is you see it with children. So like if you ever had like a little kid, a toddler, in a room full of toys, right? Like at like a Sunday school classroom kind of thing, right? And let's say the first kid gets there in the morning and he's all alone. There's no one else, no other kids have showed up. And so the kid has all the toys in the room available. And so you dump a bunch of little boxes out, and you got some Legos over here, you got some little action figures over here, you got some cars over here. That kid all alone will randomly pick one car, one toy, and start playing with it. Now let's introduce another kid. The new kid comes in and goes straight for, let's say, the balls, right, or something. Starts playing with some balls. All of a sudden, that first kid will drop whatever he's holding, rush over to the other kid, and take the ball away from that other kid and say, "Mine." Why does that happen? Because the child only wanted what the other kid had because the other kid had it. Because the other kid found it desirable, all of a sudden, he found it desirable or she found it desirable. That is the basic root of all mimetic behavior. Okay, again, all of that set up to explain how Jesus subverts this mimesis, this mimetic mechanism. Where the 10 Commandments simply said, stop it, don't do it. And if we understand it, we could look at it and even say, at the root of quote unquote sin and is this desire for what our neighbor has. We desire what others have. And that desire is what leads us to violence, right? I'm going to kill you because if I kill you, I can take your stuff. Or I don't want you to have the thing that I want, or adultery, or coveting, or any of those things, right? The root of all of it is this mimetic desire. So again, the 10 Commandments, the way it handles it is to say, stop it. But we can't because we're human. So Jesus shows up, and instead of saying, this is the way you are, stop it, stop mimicking the desires of other people, Jesus says, mimic me, be like me, follow me. And by us now turning our attention and our desire to Jesus, what we do when we do that is we see that Jesus only does what he sees the Father doing. And what does the Father do? The Father gives up everything. The Father lets it rain on the just and the unjust, right? The Father has given his only Son. Jesus openly takes all the food he has, breaks it apart, and gives it away and shares it with everybody. And when we see that is what we're mimicking, it's different than telling us to stop mimicking, because we can't stop mimicking, the desires of others. So Jesus doesn't say stop. Jesus says instead, redirect your desire, your mimicry, to my desires. And when you do that, you notice that my desires are to share with everyone. This is why in the book of Acts, when the Spirit of God falls on everybody, what's the next thing that happens? No one considered anything their own property. They all sold everything and shared it with anyone in need. It was the ultimate fulfillment of that redirected mimetic desire away from something selfish and destructive, because the whole point of mimetic theory is that it leads to this mimetic desire leads to violence and conflict and war. So this is, again, it's genius, right? Jesus redirects our built-in human mimetic desires towards instead of looking at what your neighbor has and saying, how can I get that away from them? How can I take it away from them? How can I get it for myself? Jesus teaches us to look at our neighbor and see what they don't have, to notice what our neighbor doesn't have, and say, how can I help that? So again, go all the way back to my thing about the non-con. If somehow I could have done something similar like that, I could have redirected that mimetic desire of, I must have enough for myself. I need 5 pieces of chicken and other people have none. If I could have redirected it, I could have allowed people to now look and see their neighbor, not what their neighbor has that I want, but what my neighbor has what my neighbor doesn't have, and what can I do to meet that need? Because when we look at Christ, that is what Christ teaches us. That is how Christ teaches us to be a different kind of human. It's redefining humanity in a way that's focused on not taking from other people, giving and sharing with other people. And it's a beautiful reversal of that sort of built-in human condition. So Jesus doesn't even try to turn off this mimetic desire. Jesus instead redirects that built-in human mimetic desire towards something that is ultimately good for the other, and that's also good for us. Because when we do that, that makes us a more loving, kind, giving, forgiving, understanding human being. And that kind of redirection, when you reverse the flow of that mimetic desire, it becomes like a mimetic, not desire, but giving, right? A mimetic outpouring, a mimetic compassion. It's genius. Really, it is. It's really amazing. And so why do I said I was going to tie this to something that happened today. Because today, as I'm recording this, the Congress just certified the votes for the election here in the United States, and certified that Donald Trump is our next president, and the inauguration will be in a couple of weeks. So, how does all of that I just talked about apply to our situation today? I hope it gives us an imagination for creative change, creative ways to change the world around us that aren't focused on fixing the other person. I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. That our focus isn't on getting that person to stop being like that, getting that person to not talk that way, to not think that way, to not be that way, right? That doesn't work, right? You can never get someone else to change into what you want them to be. There used to be a phrase, right? Everybody wants to change the world, but most of us can't even change the time on our VCR, right? So it's similar, right? Everyone wants to change the world. They don't want to change themselves. So I'm saying, like, as we are moving into, this is technically, it's not the inauguration, but it's the beginning of the inevitability that we're facing 4 years of something that a lot of us are really upset about and concerned about and don't know really what to do about it. And what I'm saying is maybe this is an object lesson for us. For ways we can see that people are behaving in ways that are selfish and they're not the best for everybody. That's only good for them, right? White Christian nationalism, they have got it bad, right? All they care about is themselves. All they care about are laws and rules and regulations that benefit them, and therefore they don't care about anybody who's not white Christian or, the right kind of an American. And yes, we can look at that and we can say that isn't the right way to be a human. But the solution isn't to just hold up a sign saying, this is wrong, or you're wrong, or to shout at people and tell them they're wrong, or to shame them or guilt them. It's not going to work. It won't work. But maybe there's a way to show people a better way to be a human, and to remind us, first of all, that we are all human, and that as human beings, we all suffer from the same issues and problems, that we all have the same kind of selfishness, that we all, I don't care who you are, that we all wrestle with this mimetic desire, that we see something that someone else has and we want what they have. And that maybe the better way to do it, I would argue the better way to create some change that we want to see in the next 4 years, that our efforts would be better focused not on getting those people to not be those people, because we can't do that. We're not going to do that. But maybe there are ways for us to model, to demonstrate better ways of being human, ways that model this radical empathy, that model a radical compassion, that model radical giving, the way that Jesus did, that spontaneously just helps reverse the polarity a little bit. That just that, because I think most of us, that's really all we need. Most of us just need that little nudge, that little shift of polarity, a paradigm to go, yeah, okay. Yeah, I screwed up there. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I didn't think about that. And these kind of things happen. Maybe I'll do this in an upcoming episode. Because there's some very practical, real world examples of how this has happened. How people have employed, by the way, the ironic thing is a lot of times these people aren't even Christian, but how people will employ these sort of creative ways of modeling love and empathy and compassion towards people who have none of it, who are not exhibiting any of it. In fact, who are exhibiting absolute hostility towards those same people. And that by responding in an unexpected way with humility and simplicity and love and empathy and compassion, it's almost like the other person wakes up and remembers, oh yeah, I'm a human being too. Oh yeah, wow. When they see being modeled for them such overwhelming love and empathy and compassion, it's like, yeah, I wish I could do that. Why can't I? Of course I can do that. I should do that. And there are some real world examples of that. And then maybe I'll work on that. I'll come up with some, I'll do some research for next time or down the road. I'm not sure it'll be the next time, the next episode, but it would be fun to do that because there are real world examples of those kind of things happening where people responded to hate and to really bad, selfish, language or behaviors or actions. And it worked. They transformed the other person and changed that other person. Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday in our Square 3 group a little bit. We were primarily talking about Palestine, what's going on in Palestine and Gaza and stuff. And again, it's like if there was a way, I think it's the only way it's ever going to work. If there was some way to help both sides, and I mean this, both sides, and this is so hard to do when there is so much, there are just generations of trauma and abuse. It's so difficult. So difficult. But if there was a way to help both sides have this awareness of their oneness and their connectivity, if the Israeli forces, and also especially the people in power, Netanyahu, etc., but all the way down to the soldiers and on the Hamas fighters as well. I want to say, and both sides, anybody involved in the animosity, if they could somehow look into the eyes of the other person and see themselves, see their brother, see their sister, see their God, they couldn't pull the trigger. They couldn't continue. It's the only thing that breaks the cycle. It's the only thing that makes any sense. So, in America and the U.S., we're dealing with a much different situation, mostly political. And again, it's the primary reason I stepped away from doing the God Squad, because I just felt like we're not, no disrespect to anybody in the God Squad. I love those guys. They're great. And I'm glad they're doing what they're doing. I just feel like my place is to try to be focused on this direction of helping us find new and different and creative ways to unlock that shared humanity, help us see that shared divinity, realize there's only us, and hopefully lead us more into paths of peace and understanding and dialogue and healing. And if I didn't think it was possible, I wouldn't even be doing it. I wouldn't waste my time, but I think it is doable. Okay, I'm gonna read some comments here, and I think we can wrap this up. Alan again says, I've always suspected this about the thousands when at a potluck dinner, we always end up with more food than we brought. Yep, exactly. Doadir says, John said the word was the light of the world, and the word became flesh as Jesus. Jesus said, we are the light of the world. Yes. Oh, yeah, that's right. Alan again says, the pastor would always look at me knowingly with a wink and a nod. This is a parable of the tithe, of your tithe story. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Exactly. Matt Warren says, this reminds me of when I would prepare food for the homeless and how we made the workers eat last. Thank you. We'd always have leftovers to give. It was a God thing that we had leftovers. This is a good message across the board. Yeah. Matt Warren says, come on, bro. Doadir says, creative change. Yep, I like that a lot. It seems to work more slowly than we Americans like. Exactly. I'm going to read a couple more comments by Doadir, and then I'm going to say something about that. She says, after 50 years of trying to change others, I finally figured out changing me works much better. Bingo. And model all included and ditch the Christianese. Yes, exactly. Judy says, I'm with you, Doadir. Be the person you want others to be. Be the change you want to see in the world, right? So to your point, Doadir, about the American way, right? We were also talking about this yesterday. So America had to have a violent revolutionary war to become an independent country from England. But did you know Canada didn't have to do that? Didn't have violence. There was no war. Did you know Australia, also a colony, became its own country, its own nation, separate from England without a war? But we had to have a war. Did you also know that, America had to have a war to end the issue of slavery in our country, right? Just so many hundreds of thousands of people died where Americans killed Americans to settle this issue of slavery. But other countries didn't have to kill anybody to end slavery. William Wilberforce ended slavery in England without killing anybody. So Americans, we like violence. We were founded in violence. We use violence to accomplish things, mostly because I think we're violent, but also because it's the fastest way in our minds. It's if we just use violence, we can solve this problem, right? But so we in America have historically been unable. This is our blind spot. We have been very slow to notice other ways of creating change outside of violence. And I think this is partially why today, in the last couple of months even, right? What are we seeing on the news? People who are frustrated, people who feel powerless, people who want to see change in the world politically. And what are they reverting to? Driving their truck into crowds and killing people, taking a gun and shooting a bunch of people, making bombs and setting them around the city and trying to blow people up. Violence is the way most of us jump to. In our minds, there's doing nothing, and then there's using violence. And I'm telling you, between doing nothing and violence, there is a wide open, so many possibilities, huge spectrum of possibilities for actions to be taken that are not violent, that are actually more effective. My book, Jesus Unarmed, I document this. There have been so many studies over like a 50-year, 80-year period of time around the world comparing the effectiveness of violent responses and nonviolent responses. And non-peaceful, creative, nonviolent response is 90% more effective than violent responses, and they last longer. The change that they bring lasts longer. Because as someone said in our discussion the other day, when you use violence to quote unquote solve a problem, there's always trauma created. And what you've done by using violence to get your way, to make change, is you've created trauma in people, and that trauma will later manifest in more violence. But if you find a way for people to come together and agree together that this other way is really the better way and it makes more sense, and you can accomplish it without violence, then there's no trauma. Everyone just agrees together, this is the better way. Yep, this does work better. This is better for everybody. Yep, that's why we're going to do it this way. And so it's much more challenging, I think, for Americans, because historically we've always turned to violence, and we've always seen violence going back to the founding of our nation. We've always seen and used violence as the primary change maker, but it doesn't have to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. Doa Deer says, I wonder how much disease is violent response to something one can't control. I don't know about disease. Yeah, I don't know about disease. I mean, some diseases are based, that's why when there are genocides and wars, you also have disease around them. I think it's usually from neglect, because people are so focused on the violence and the war, they're not paying attention to the other things that can be done to keep everybody healthy. So I think it's just a byproduct of the selfishness a lot of times. Yeah. All right, everybody. So that's our hour. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for your comments. Doa Deer, Alan, Matt, Judy, Jeremy, John, James. Thank you all so much. I love doing these. I love doing the Second Cup with Keith as a live stream like this, because I do get some feedback from you and we can have a little bit of a dialogue. I appreciate that. Thank you all for listening. I do hope you will, if you haven't picked up the Quantum Sayings of Jesus, go pick it up. I have an online course based on that as well. I'm going to be creating an online course for the Quantum Sayings of Mary. And I might be able to get that out before the book comes out. So if you're curious about the Gospel of Mary, hopefully in a couple of months there'll be a course, and then the book will be out a few months after that. All right, love you guys. I hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great week ahead. Think about the things I thought about. Think about ways that you can sort of employ some creative, nonviolent ways to, again, the change that happens with you, right? It's not about changing the other person. It's about changing yourself. What are some things you can do? And again, it's going to cost something. You have to give up something. You may have to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. But things that you can do that would help other people also to have that same kind of epiphany, that same kind of awakening, right? Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that more as well in the future, upcoming episodes of Second Cup with Keith. I would also appreciate it too if you have an idea for an episode, something you want me to talk about, or something that would be an interesting topic for Second Cup with Keith. Let me know. You can leave a comment. You can message me on Facebook or Instagram. I'm also on Blue Sky, Twitter. Yeah, let me know. I'm wide open to suggestions and ideas. All right. Love you guys. Again, you guys take care. And yeah, we'll see you next time. All right.